Today we're going over 6 things that you can do during your RBT session that will help you get your BCBA hours. Hi, my name is Jasmine. I'm a BCBA since 2014 and I love to help future BCBAs get their hours, feel confident to pass their exam, but then actually develop skills that they need to be confident BCBAs. So we naturally do preference assessment and choice making naturally throughout our sessions. So it makes sense that this is something that you can do to get those BCBA hours. Now, there are so many different types of preference assessments. There's choice making, there's free operant, there's multiple stimuli with replacements and multiple stimuli without replacements, and so on. So I want you to go into detail about what kind of preference assessment and choice making did you provide. Was it a non-preferred versus a preferred, two preferred, what type of reinforcer or task, location, people, activity did you provide? How did this prevent the behaviors for that particular learner? And then also what behaviors, more positive behaviors, did it promote? Now, when looking at choice making and preference assessments, we often use this as an antecedent manipulation, which is preventing those behaviors. But then also as an antecedent manipulation, we want to promote more positive behaviors. So the next one that we would naturally pick for getting those BCBA hours is ethics. Now this is something that we do naturally within our sessions that we might not necessarily realize that we're doing. So for example, monetary gifts, dual relationships and multiple relationships, client dignity, professional competency, integrity, supervision training, evidence-based, client, all these things are things that we naturally do during our sessions that we might not realize. So go ahead and write a summary about how these apply to your client. Now, if you're working with a BCBA that you know and that knows that client, then that's wonderful because they're able to give you a little bit more information, feedback that will help you develop this further for when you're a BCBA in the future. If you're working with a BCBA who knows that client, then that's typically the easiest situation to be into because then that BCBA can help further evaluate your skills and your knowledge, so this way you can go into depth a little bit further for your BCBA skills in the future. Now, if you're working with a BCBA such as myself, a mentor BCBA, just make sure to keep that HIPAA compliance, since we're talking about privacy and ethics, make sure to keep that HIPAA compliance and just use those initials. But a mentor BCBA such as myself can go into more details with you, so this way we can develop strategies to help you grow as a BCBA. So naturally, the next thing is reinforcers and punishers. We use this so much and we don't even realize it most of the time. So reinforcer is anything that is going to increase a behavior. Now, it can increase a bad behavior or it increase a positive behavior, or a punisher is something that can decrease a behavior. Now, once again, it can decrease a good behavior or it can decrease a bad behavior. Now, when looking at reinforcers and punishers, we want to see what type of reinforcers and punishers are we using. Now, some kids do really well with edible reinforcers, some do really well with toy reinforcers, videos, attention, physical contact. There's a variety of different types. Now, we also want to look at what situations we are using these reinforcers versus these punishers. Now, at the table, we might do an environmental arrangement of having the kids sit on the other side of the table, and then when they're sitting nicely, we might say good job sitting down, as a way to promote the positive behavior of them sitting down and decrease or punish that behavior of them trying to scratch us. So we might want to look at that. So we want to see what situations we're using those reinforcers and those punishers. And we want to see whether or not those are actually effective at increasing that behavior or decreasing that behavior. Now, reinforcers and punishers are very interesting because they can change. If you eat so many Oreos in a day, you're most likely not going to be motivated to work with those reinforcers anymore. And vice versa is if you become so exposed to a certain stimuli, you're gonna get satiated, you're gonna get habituated to that. So it might not work as a punisher in the future as well. So it might work for a short period of time, but does it work long term? And that's something that you got to think about when you're working as a future BCBA, is you have to think of, okay, what strategy can I use in this moment to either increase that behavior or decrease that behavior? And then what can I use to make sure that it stays long term? Because because a lot of things are just temporary. So we want to make sure we're looking at that. Naturally, we're going to use a lot of strategies throughout our session. These are ABA evidence-based strategies that we're using to promote positive behaviors, increase learning, decrease problematic behaviors within the natural environment that are going to help this individual be more successful over a lifetime. That is our goal, to help these individuals feel confident, comfortable, safe, but also learn skills that they need to be successful in the long term. So next thing we're going to talk about is those detailed strategies of what you're using, whether that's environmental arrangements, other antecedent manipulations, consequence-based strategies. You can use priming, prompting, shaping, prompt hierarchy. You can use so many different strategies in a day, but I really want you to focus on how is the strategy preventing a behavior and how is the strategy promoting a more positive behavior, or vice versa. If you're using a strategy that is in response to a behavior, how is that really reducing that behavior, and what else is it, what replacement skill are you teaching in replacement of that behavior? So that's really important. You want to talk about the strategies and how they actually affect the client, because that's going to help you in the future when you're a BCBA and you are looking at a kid and you are noticing these behaviors and you're saying, okay, like what strategies can we use in this moment? This is going to help you so much. We use a lot of natural environment teaching within our sessions for so many different things, and this is such an underrated skill, but it is definitely something that you're going to need as a future BCBA. So I want you to take some time out to identify situations that you're using this strategy in your session. So whether that's transitioning between activities or locations, holding the hand in the hallway, whether that's eating, toileting, dressing, it could be anything that you would teach within the natural environment. And then I want you to write it out in detail. So I want you to imagine that situation or do that actual activity with your kid. And then I want you to, of course, allow them access to your to their reinforcer, so this way you can then write it out in detail, step by step of everything they worked on. Now, don't miss any detail, because it's very important when you're going to train a future RBT or when you have a future client. You want to really make sure you write it out in detail so you're paying attention to that, and you can better plan any kind of antecedent strategies that you need to help prevent those behaviors, or what kind of strategies you need to use to promote those behaviors, whether you need to use prompting, shaping, environmental arrangements, if you need to do a changing criteria on design, things like that. That's going to really help you do this in the future. Now, once again, if you're working with a BCBA that you know, that knows that client, then that's wonderful, because that's going to give you a lot more leverage in really focusing on all these little things and skills and details that BCBA would be well versed in. Now, if you're working with a mentor BCBA like myself, that is fine, because we can also ask so many questions that you might not realize that you're doing, or give you advice on something that might work. The next thing we're going over is ABC data. Now, ABC data, of course, is the antecedent behavior consequence. Now, there are so many instances where we are taught just the basics. Okay, I give the instruction, they respond to the instruction, and then we give them, oh, good job, here you go. But there are so many different things. Now, for example, let's say a kid is going into a group room, so let's say group circle time. Now, let's say the kid immediately starts throwing something. The RBT is now able to understand or identify what really happened in that situation to provoke that behavior. So I want you to pay attention. I want you to pay attention to what stimuli is going on in the environment. Is there another kid screaming or crying? Is there another kid that has been aggressive toward that poor kid? Is there a video, a non-preferred video, or is there a preferred video that then ended right at, let's say, the last 5 seconds? So you want to look at the environmental stimuli. You also want to look at what's within the environment. So you want to look at toys. You want to look at if there's a toy that they commonly throw, or an area that they commonly go to, that they see that and they do that behavior. You also want to see how other people are responding to those behaviors within the environment as well. Because sometimes we focus so much on our clients that we're not realizing that other therapists or even other staff members, teachers, etc., they're still responding. They might go, oh, or they might go, oh, or they might know stop even while you're working with your kids. So you want to make sure that you are fully aware of what's actually going on. Now, there is a video that I love to do when I'm training my future RBTs and also when I'm training my future BCBAs. So if you have a chance to do this with me, it's a great activity. Now it goes, the client is asking for their preferred food. Mom is saying no. Client immediately hits their head. Mom says no as a consequence. That consequence then turns into the antecedent. Again, the client asks for the food. Then the mom just uses planned ignoring. The consequence becomes the antecedent. The client asks for food again. Mom says no. Goes back to antecedent. Client hits himself. Mom uses planned ignoring and says no. Then it just keeps going on and on. And within 1 to 2 minutes, you have about 20 lines of ABC data. Now, this is so hard to do the first few times, so I want to make sure that you actually have access to a BCBA who can sit down with you and identify all these little things, because you never actually know if you might be missing something. Even sometimes I miss things, and I've been a BCBA since 2014. So if you're working with a BCBA that knows that client, it's going to be great because they're going to be able to ask you that information. But if you're working with a mentor BCBA like myself, we're still going to be able to identify it and ask situations. It just has to be a little bit more for recall, for your recall. So try to really make sure that you focus on the details of the environments. So as you guys can see, these are 6 easy tasks that you guys can do during your RBT session that will help you get your BACB hours and also the BACB experience, which is very important. I know you guys have exams, you guys have homework, you guys have so many tasks, so I really wanted to make sure you guys had something that was a little bit simple that you can also do at any time. So you can repeat these tasks as well as much as you need to get those BCBA hours. Now, disclaimer, BCBAs are busy. We have a lot of clients. So when you're doing these tasks, I don't want you to wait for the BCBA to initiate because we can be busy. So I really want you to take the initiative in trying this out. Now, if you guys want to see examples of each task, just let me know in the comments below and I would be happy to create a video. Just tell me which strategy you guys would like to see and how it is actually done. So until next time.